studios. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says a new US-backed plan to end Russia's invasion would freeze fighting along the current front lines while allowing troop withdrawals and the creation of demilitarized zones. Syria's foreign and defense ministers meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow to discuss military and economic cooperation. The meet comes months after former President Bashar al-Assad was ousted. Thailand's caretaker leader is named as his party's prime ministerial candidate for the February elections. His nomination comes as his country remains embroiled in a deadly border dispute with Cambodia. A Pakistani court extends interim bail for former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife Bushra Bibi in multiple cases linked to the May 9 unrest, directing Khan to appear at the next hearing. And a 6.1 magnitude earthquake strikes Taiwan's southeastern Taitang County, shaking buildings and Taipei. No immediate damage or injuries were reported. Hello and welcome. Our top story today is from Libya. The country's army chief has been killed in a plane crash in Turkey. His name was Lieutenant General Mohammed al-Haddad. He was the Libyan army's chief of general staff. Haddad was returning to Tripoli yesterday from Ankara, where he held talks with the Turkish defense minister and his Turkish counterpart. There were in total 8 people on the private jet. Haddad was accompanied by 4 other high-ranking military officials and 3 crew members. The Falcon 50 aircraft took off from Ankara on Tuesday. And just minutes later, the plane requested an emergency landing due to electrical failure, but contact with the plane was then lost. Later, the plane's wreckage was found in the Haymana district near Ankara. All of those on the plane were found dead. Witnesses described the moments of the crash. They said it was as loud as a bomb blast.
There was a big jolt. At first, everyone thought it was an earthquake. Then people started saying a plane had crashed, so we, as citizens, came to see if there was anything we could do.
Turkey has launched an investigation into the crash. So far, authorities have recovered a voice recorder and a black box.
The aircraft's voice recorder was found at the wreckage site at 2:45 and the black box at 3:20. The examination and evaluation processes for these have been initiated by the relevant committees. Additionally, a 14-person delegation from the Libyan Ministry of Defense, including 5 relatives of those who lost their lives, and an 8-person delegation from the Libyan Ministry of Interior, a total of 22 Libyan personnel have arrived in Ankara.
The bodies of all those killed in the incident were at the crash site. Libya's Prime Minister, Abdulhamid Dbeibeh, took to Facebook to mourn the death of the army chief. Dbeibeh leads the UN-recognized government in Tripoli, while the east is controlled by Khalifa Haftar's administration. Libya was split between 2 rival administrations after a NATO-backed revolt that toppled and killed longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. The Libyan army chief killed in the crash was part of the UN-recognized government. He had been the army's chief of general staff since August 2020. Haddad was appointed by then Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj. The deadly crash that killed the Libyan army chief came just days after Pakistan's army chief Asim Munir visited the country. Munir met with officials from Haftar's administration to finalise a defence pact. Meanwhile, Turkey has had close ties with the UN-backed governments in Tripoli. Ankara provides economic and military support to the government, and there have been frequent visits between both sides. The latest visit by the Libyan army chief was supposed to be one of these regular visits, but things took an unexpected turn and it ended in a deadly crash. And joining us to discuss this further is Dr. David Matsanga, an African affairs analyst and political scientist, joining us live from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me on this sad day when we have lost one of our African heroes, a man that we expected to organize, pacify Libya.
Dr. Matsanga, let's start off by looking at the seniority of those killed in this crash. How could their deaths impact the UN-recognised government in Libya?
It's a very big blow for the UN-backed government in Tripoli. Remember, General Khalifa Haftar on the other side in Benghazi has taken over chunks, and he's even working with some Western countries on the United Nations Security Council. And the military in Tripoli depended on this general for mobilization and for making sure that they protected the government in Tripoli. So his death has indeed brought a lot of impact. It is going to impact, going to change the politics of Libya again. We don't know what happened. We need to know the answers, because I have followed Libya. I've been one of the few people writing and making sure that those who brought Libya to where it is pay for the price, including Sarkozy or France.
Yes, and Dr. Matsanga, we will come back to the specifics on this crash. But first of all, I want to look at the backdrop that is there in Libya. Of course, this crash comes just days after an arms deal was agreed between Libya and Pakistan. That happened despite a UN embargo on Libya. Do you think that the need for now a new army chief could impact that deal and other global defence relations?
Yes, that it means that things will change. It means that the new person, whatever happens in this deal was going to give the Tripoli-based government some military support to be able to recover the entire Libya. But what it has done now is brought a big hole in the Libya Tripoli-led government, and it is going to take them a long time for them to reorganize themselves in order to come back to the reality and face the General Khalifa Haftar across in Benghazi.
And Dr. Matsanga, this crash has been described as a tragic accident by the UN-recognised Libyan Prime Minister. Is that the only likely cause of this crash, or could something else be at play?
I think until we see the black box, speculations are going to rise. But I think, given that the dynamics of politics, that people are worried about Pakistan involvement across and the Turkish involvement, anything could happen across, and anything could be linked to what has happened. How these two people, a plane in a safe place in Italy, in Turkey, could take off and something just goes that way. Was there a disagreement? What was it? Was the general, as the general told people, something which we don't know? Something must have happened. So until we get the black box, the speculations and other theories are going to come. But for me, there is one thing as an African which I want to tell you. I am not very, very happy about what is going on in Libya. And I'm one of the few people who have criticized the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1973 that allowed Mr. Sarkozy. I have followed Mr. Sarkozy and I brought him into court, and he admitted, the court agreed with me. So I am very happy that at least something is going to be done, and something should be done for Libya to come together so that it can be one country. But of course, the enemies of Libya, those who wanted to divide Libya, are still at large, including the United States of America, France, and other powers. They are still fighting and arming General Khalifa Haftar. It's a sad story for us Africans.
Yes, that's all we have time for. Dr. David Matsanga, thank you ever so much for joining us on First Post Africa.
Thank you very much, my dear. I know you don't celebrate Christmas, but try to. We are in the Christmas festival and the things are doing very well. Keep it up, keep informing the world. We need a better Libya for the people of Libya to be recognized internationally again, because it was killed by the United Nations Security Council resolution, which was baseless. No weapons of mass destruction were found. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on now, and Uganda is tightening its grip on the internet. Just weeks before the national election, the government has restricted imports of Starlink satellite equipment. The restriction came to light through a leaked internal memo on December the 19th. The document, issued through Uganda's Revenue Authority, instructs officials to block all Starlink equipment unless importers get written clearance. The clearance has to be given by the country's military chief. He is also the son of President Yoweri Museveni. The decision comes ahead of Uganda's January 15th elections. President Museveni, now 81 years old, is seeking another term. That would extend his rule to nearly half a century. His main rival is pop star turned opposition leader Bobi Wine. And this is the second showdown between the two countries after the elections in 2021. Wine says the move to restrict Starlink imports for the next election look familiar. He took to social media to condemn the decision. He questions the Museveni government and their intentions.
They're now saying anyone who desires to import Starlink equipment must get a clearance letter from dictator Museveni's son. Ridiculous. If they are not planning mischief or electoral fraud, why are they so scared of people accessing internet during electoral process? Ultimately, the people will prevail against all these illegalities. History is replete with examples.
Starlink's cable-free signal runs in 26 African countries. It delivers high-speed internet using low Earth orbit satellites. No cables, no towers, no ground infrastructure. That's why it's popular, and that's why critics say it worries the Ugandan government. Starlink does not yet have a license to operate in Uganda, but many Ugandans have reportedly imported the equipment anyway and used it independently. Uganda's Revenue Authority says the restrictions are routine. They argue many countries regulate communications technology. But critics say this is different, because the approval now sits with the military, more specifically Museveni's son, and also because it comes during election season. Opposition leader Bobi Wine has stepped up campaigning in Kampala. Videos from recent rallies appear to show security forces using extreme measures to control the crowd. And supporters of Bobi Wine say that has been the story of his entire campaign trail.
It has been tough, almost like a battlefield. Tear gas, live bullets, rubber bullets, and all sorts of intimidation in the campaign trail.
Uganda's Electoral Commission says more than 21 million voters are registered for the upcoming election. Museveni has already removed age and term limits from the constitution, allowing him to stay in power. Analysts say the Starlink restrictions fits a broader pattern, controlling access and information, especially during politically sensitive moments. Museveni's government argues such measures protect national security and public order, but critics say they suppress dissent and limit the opposition's voice.
If the elections were fair and fair, we expect President Kyagulanyi to take on the country, to win by over 75%. But the unfortunate bit is that security does not think that it is the right time to hand over power to a civilian.
So, as the election draws closer and allegations of Museveni's authoritarianism grows louder, the road ahead for Uganda looks far from peaceful. We'll keep tracking this story for you. Moving on, let's turn our attention to Kenya. A Kenyan man has been sentenced to life in prison in the United States. He was plotting a 9/11 inspired attack on Atlanta, Georgia. His name is Cholo Abdi Abdullah. He is 34 years old. On Monday, Abdullah was hit with 2 consecutive life terms in prison for the terror scheme. He was convicted of multiple crimes.
Today, justice has been served. Abdullah, an Al-Shabaab terrorist, sought to replicate the most horrific terrorist attack in our history, as he prepared to hijack a commercial airliner to take down a building on U.S. soil. We thwarted this plot due to the relentless efforts of U.S. law enforcement and thereby likely saved many innocent lives.
Abdullah had been training with Al-Shabaab. It is a terrorist organization and an Al-Qaeda affiliate based in Somalia. Abdullah joined Al-Shabaab in 2015. He spent around a year at multiple safe houses in Somalia where he worked with high-ranking Al-Shabaab terrorists. There, Abdullah received military-style training. he learnt how to fire an AK-47 assault rifle and how to make different sized explosives. Between October 2017 and July 2019, Abdullah became a student at a flight school in the Philippines. His training was funded by Al-Shabaab. In January 2019, Abdullah was briefed about the suicide bombing attack. However, he was arrested in the Philippines in July 2019, before he can complete his commercial pilot's license training. After his arrest, Abdullah confessed that he was training to become a pilot on behalf of Al-Shabaab so that he could hijack a plane. As part of his attack planning, he searched for the tallest building in Atlanta, Delta Flights, and how feasible it is to carry a knife on board a plane. Abdullah confessed to the FBI that he expected to die in the attack. He also compiled research on post-September 11th hijacking attempts. After his arrest in 2019, Abdullah was transferred to US custody in December 2020. And then, in November 2024, he was found guilty of multiple terror-related crimes. The Al-Shabaab terror group remains one of the top targets of the US. The United States Africa Command has been regularly carrying out airstrikes targeting ISIS and Al-Shabaab in Somalia. And under President Donald Trump, Washington has dramatically intensified its military air campaign. Al-Shabaab, an al-Qaeda-linked terror group, has waged a brutal insurgency in Somalia since the mid-2000s. It has carried out bombings, assassinations and mass casualty attacks to overthrow the government and impose its hardline version of Islamic rule. The verdict is a stark reminder that Al-Shabaab's threat stretches far beyond Somalia, from training recruits overseas, exporting terror ambitions, and keeping the shadow of extremist violence jihad very much alive. And we end the show today in Malawi, where anger is growing over a planned visit of the nation's vice president to the UK. Jane Ansah is set to visit the European nation after Christmas for a fortnight. While the visit will be in a private capacity, frustrations have arisen over the reported size of her entourage and the trip's overall cost. The row began after the leak of a document to the Malawi High Commission in London. The letter was signed by Malawi's Secretary of Foreign Affairs and listed 15 individuals who were set to accompany Ansah. And the Malawian media has published further alleged details, saying the trip will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Other local media outlets report that the trip could cost more than $1 million. There are also media allegations that the trip is to celebrate Ansah's husband's birthday. But the Vice President's office have disputed this information.
These documents did not originate from any government institution and do not reflect official records or approved government expenditures.
Ansah's office also hit out at what they call misleading false information.
The Office of the Vice President remains committed to transparency, accountability, and the responsible use of public resources, and strongly condemns the deliberate spread of false information intended to mislead the public.
But the timing of this leak has raised eyebrows in Malawi. Jane Ansah has only been in position of power since October the 4th. She was the running mate of President Peter Mutharika, who beat incumbent President Lazarus Chakwara in September's election. They promised to manage the economy, which the World Bank describes as being in a deep and protracted crisis. And since winning the election, the government has announced a series of austerity measures. Among the announced cutbacks, the reduction of both domestic and international travel by senior government officials. A human rights organisation in Malawi has lambasted the Vice President's planned UK visit.
Particularly given that the trip is explicitly described as private yet appears to be financed using public resources. While Malawians are continuously urged to tighten their belts, endure hardship, and accept reduced public services in the name of fiscal discipline, senior political leaders appear to exempt themselves from these very principles.
As of now, the Vice President's trip is still scheduled for December the 26th. While the government remains defiant in calling the leaks false information, the people of Malawi want answers. A promise of strong economic action, but citizens have called this publicly funded private visit double standards. That's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.
Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from across the world. We shine a light on the day's biggest issues and controversies. I'm Kerry Johnston. Let's begin with the top headlines now. Ukraine's President Zelensky unveils the latest version of a US-led draft plan to end the war with Russia. Moscow says it's currently reviewing the plan. The Pentagon report flags China's military ties with Pakistan, saying Beijing is considering several locations in Pakistan to be PLA military logistics facilities. Turkish authorities find the cockpit voice recorder and black box from a private jet that crashed overnight, killing the head of Libya's armed forces and his 4 aides. Italian regulators order Meta to open its WhatsApp chat platform to rival AI chatbots, as Rome and EU authorities pursue a probe that the US tech giant is abusing its dominant market position. And India grants licenses to 2 airline companies to begin operations weeks after mass cancellations by the country's largest airline, Indigo, brought into focus the lack of competition in the world's fastest growing aviation market. Let's begin with the latest updates on the US H-1B visa program. A system that once gave everyone an equal chance is now being rewritten. The United States is set to overhaul the decades-old H-1B visa lottery system. The Trump administration has officially suspended the random selection process, replacing it with a weighted model that prioritizes higher skilled and higher paid foreign workers. The H-1B lottery came into play because demand was far higher than supply. Only 85,000 work visas were available each year, so a computerized draw was used to pick applicants. Salary or seniority did not matter under the system. Anyone who registered had the same chance of being selected. But now, instead of a computer lottery, H-1B visas will be allocated based on salary levels and skill sets. Applicants with higher wages are expected to get preference, while entry-level and lower-paid workers may face tougher odds.
The rule implements a weighted selection process that will favor allocating H-1B visas to higher-skilled and higher-paid aliens, while maintaining the opportunity for employers to secure H-1B workers at all wage levels. This final rule is effective February 27, 2026, and will be in place for the fiscal year 2027 H-1B cap registration season.
Well, the new rule will take effect from February 27, 2026 and be implemented for the fiscal year 2027 registration cycle. US authorities say the change aims to prevent misuse of the program. Officials argue that the existing lottery system was exploited by some employers to hire foreign workers at lower wages, undercutting American workers. It's not the first time President Trump has tightened scrutiny of the H-1B visa program. Since the start of his second term, restricting immigration has remained a top priority for the administration. Since September, the US has introduced a series of measures, including a steep $100,000 fee for H-1B visas, expanded social media vetting for applicants, and stricter background checks. Well, these changes have led to significant delays in H-1B visa stamping and green card processing. Meanwhile,